Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
It's time for another edition of the Tecmo Bowl as the Hokies travel to take on the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech this weekend. Let's preview the matchup on episode 444 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Thursday, October 9th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't already, refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left by lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. To my right, senior staff writer Andy Bitter, and producing the show, as always, behind the scenes is Mr. Nick Brown. Well, as mentioned in the beginning, we are going to be talking about the upcoming matchup between Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech on the gridiron. So before we dive into that contest, Andy, were there any breakdowns from the press conference this week of note?
Pretty light news week. I think some of the questions are injury related, and we'll find out more with the availability report tonight. How's Terry and Stewart doing? He's really rushed the ball well the last couple of weeks. He banged up his shoulder last week, had a wrap on that, so they don't know exactly where he's at. I think they're hoping some offensive linemen come back. They can have a full complement there, but no real clear answers on that on Tuesday and Wednesday when we had our availability.
Well, now let's look ahead to the upcoming contest, which will take place on Saturday, October 11th at 3:30 p.m. at Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Currently, Georgia Tech is favored by about 2 touchdowns over the Hokies. When taking a look at the history, Virginia Tech does lead the series 12-8. They won last year's contest, and they are 7-3 when the game is played in Atlanta. But they this year are taking on a 13th-ranked Georgia Tech team who is 5-0 with a signature win against, at the time, a 12th-ranked Clemson. What has stood out so far to allow them to stay undefeated?
I think a call that really went in their favor against Wake Forest. That's the main thing. But, yes, they've won games. They've beaten Colorado. They've beaten Clemson. Both those teams have losing records, right? It's just so I think they're good, but I don't think they're the 13th best team in the country. Like, if they were the 13th best team in the country, they would have soundly whipped Colorado, who's not a good team. They probably wouldn't have gone down to the wire with Clemson like they did. They probably wouldn't have gone to Winston-Salem and should have lost the game, right? I think they're good. They've definitely got weapons offensively. Their defense, especially their run defense, leaves a little bit to be desired, we'll say.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I'm very well versed in Georgia Tech because they're my NCAA dynasty team and this Tech Sideline team season that we do. It's a fun team to watch because Haynes King is such a fun player to watch. He is just all out, it seems, on every run. If there's a brick wall in front of him, he just runs like straight into that thing. There's like no letting up on that. And you wonder, can a guy, get through an entire season playing like that? And we'll see. Seems to be healthy coming into this game, coming off an open week like that. But, this is an interesting team. I remember that Colorado game in the opener, and they had some very uncharacteristic fumbles right away. They kept that game close early on, and they were actually down, I think, early on in that game. Came back and won it. I'm not going to say comfortably, but it felt like they were in control at the end of that one. The Clemson one, it felt like they were in control early, and then Clemson came back, and then Georgia Tech ended up winning at the end. It's a team that seems to get up for the big games, and maybe less so for the ones that aren't the ranked ACC opponents. And Virginia Tech is not a ranked ACC opponent to this one, so we'll see how they come out. It feels like they sort of got their wake-up call the last time when they played Wake Forest, and they have a week of rest to get ready for this. So you would expect a team that's pretty focused in this, but historically under Brent Key, they've been better in the big games and not quite one like this that they have coming up.
So you guys know that my window to the world is through the roster cards. You guys do a lot more research than I do. And you hear 5-0 and number 13 in the country, and then you go to make up the roster card, and there's just not a lot of impressive stats there. I think Haynes King rushing is impressive, 7 touchdowns. He's only played 4 games, if I'm correct. I think
He missed the Gardner-Webb game.
Yeah, but he's got 3 touchdown passes. Kyron Drones has 9. So you start looking at stuff like that and you start wondering what's the secret sauce here. And a little bit of trivia: Georgia Tech only lost 1 game last year to a team with a losing record, Virginia Tech.
Right, and they didn't have Haynes King, and they also
Details.
at that point in their season that they were starting, their backup quarterback was the guy who eventually became their 3rd string quarterback. Remember, they brought in
Philo, is that his name?
Oh no, he's their backup now. He's the good one. The other guy was the one who left, who wasn't good.
Yeah.
Although he had beaten us as a true freshman in 2022.
That's right.
Right.
But Pyron?
Pyron, but wasn't good last year. And not only that, but remember Jamal Haynes left the game at halftime, never came back in. So they were without their 2 best offensive players for either the whole game in the case of the quarterback or half the game in the case of the running back.
And I think Virginia Tech won that game 21-6, if I remember correctly. And I just remember feeling in control the whole time.
Yeah, 21-6 was the final last year. And when you take a look at this season, it is a rushing attack that is the 2nd best in the ACC, over 200 yards a game. And you've talked about the conductor of the offense, but it starts with Haynes King, who is leading the team in rushing as well. What makes him so special?
I think his toughness, his improvisation skills. Obviously, he's an excellent runner. I think he's got very deceptive speed. His passing leaves a little bit to be desired. His completion percentage is really good because they do a good job designing their passing game off the running game. It's interesting how his passing numbers have changed throughout his career. First year as a starter 2 years ago, he led the ACC in touchdowns with 27 and interceptions with 16. Well, since then, he's only thrown 3 interceptions, but his touchdown numbers have also dropped dramatically. From an efficiency standpoint, still completing a high percentage of his passes, but not so much boom or bust in there. They're much like nearly all their scores come off the running game these days. Last year, his running style was so physical that it was tough for him to stay healthy last year. What he did in the Georgia game last year was nothing short of incredible. Just with how banged up he was in that season. He missed 2 full games and was kind of in and out in some other games because he was hurt, and Philo did an outstanding job once they put him in there. And Philo's still their backup. He started against Gardner-Webb this year. I think he's got a much higher ceiling than King as a passer. But King is a guy who probably should be fresh. He's only played in 4 games, and he's coming off a bye week. So, in effect, he's kind of had 2 bye weeks in there. So, it's going to be a lot different than last year when Virginia Tech didn't have to face him. I think Tech's run defense has been very good this year in 4 of their 6 games, but the 2 games where they were not good, they faced very similar offenses where the quarterback is the focal point of the running attack. And although he's got a different body build, he's Pavia-esque in terms of his toughness level, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you say deceptively fast. I think he's just fast. I think he runs the ball really well. You've mentioned his toughness. I mean, he kind of fits this ethos of Georgia Tech. Like you go to Brent Key, like, what do you want to do? And what did he say after that Florida State win? He's like, run the ball. Like he just like
he left out dang.
Yeah, he didn't say dang. Should have added that. I mean, that is just their mindset on offense, and that's what you get when you have a former offensive lineman as your head coach. That's gonna be how you do it, and I think King kind of embodies that approach because they are gonna run it. You have to count for him on every single play. And I think that's the really tough part is you're not 11 on 10, you're 11 on 11. Every single play, hat on hat, have to figure that out. And I think it's going to be a real challenge for Tech's linebackers this week. They've faced maybe more traditional running games the last couple of weeks, less so against Wake Forest than NC State. I don't think CJ Bailey was a real threat to run the ball in that game. Ashford was a bit more last week, and they gave up some yards on the ground in that sense. But this will be, you're right, this will be like facing Colton Joseph, like facing Pavia. I mean, this is a guy you have to worry about every single play, and I think it's going to be a real tough challenge for this defense.
To fill in just a few numbers, Chris talked about King's completion percentage at 68.5%. Haynes King's a redshirt senior, so this is the last year. And Philo is a redshirt freshman, so if that keeps working out, you'll see more of him in the future.
Yeah, and it isn't just King in the backfield. Let's shift to their running back duo between Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley, who have both been impressive also.
Yeah, Haynes had a 1,000-yard season 2 years ago, almost hit 1,000 yards last year. He's also a very, very good receiver out of the backfield. So he's one of those guys, when he's in the game, it could be a run or a pass. He's a very shifty guy. Reminds me a little bit, actually, of Raheem Blackshear, similar build and all of that. And Hosley is a transfer from, I believe, Penn. And he's averaging, I think, 8 yards per carry this year. Doesn't get as many carries as King and Haynes. One of them is Jamal Haynes, the other is Haynes King. It's a pair of Haynes.
Yeah, we only got one more year of that.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, Hosley's been a good back for them, so they've got a good 1-2 punch there, and you're going to see a lot a run heavy focus. Like Andy said, Tech's linebackers are going to be tested in this one. There's a rumor that Jaden Keller is banged up. Maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. But again, if Caleb Woodson isn't back, that you've got to go down the linebacker depth chart even more this week. That would probably mean that Noah Chambers starts. Probably means that George Balance is bumped up to maybe your number 2 will linebacker. So more snaps for young players if Keller can't go. Doesn't
Chambers being in make you feel better about defending the run? Like typically young guys struggle to defend the pass.
Yeah. He's been really good. I think he's just an instinctive, natural inside linebacker. Now, that being said, he's never been in a game with this much eye candy. That was the phrase of the press conference yesterday, right? Eye candy. They send so many men in motion. They just disguise things really well. The whole point of the offense, it's very similar to when Virginia Tech's offense peaked under drones. There was so much motion, so much trickeration, and so many times you'd see the linebackers and safeties going this way and then the play going that way. Yeah. Whereas the last 2 offenses Virginia Tech faced, it's a little bit more straightforward, which makes it easier on a true freshman linebacker. This is be a much greater challenge.
Yeah, I feel like that comes with film study over time, and you don't get fooled by those kind of things, or like this is how they're gonna fool you. Don't fall for it. Whereas if you're kind of playing off instincts, which I imagine a lot of true freshmen are at this point, you're just sort of following where you think it's going, where you have that natural inclination. So that's why I think it could be a challenge if they have to lean on those younger linebackers in this game, because they don't have a whole lot of experience going out there and seeing this type of thing.
And when you talk about their up front, they have allowed the lowest amount of sacks in the ACC, just 3 in 5 games. What does Virginia Tech have to do to try to get through that line?
Probably blitz. I would expect Tech to play a lot of men around the line of scrimmage just simply because of the Georgia Tech rushing attack. I think you've got to try and disguise your coverages, disguise your blitz and things like that. But their offensive line is so experienced. They've got 2 starters with over 1,000 snaps in their career. They've got 2 more with over 2,000 snaps in their career. It's a little bit different than Virginia Tech's offensive line, and they appear to be healthy.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is you have to get them in third and long. I mean, part of this Georgia Tech offense is they run it so much that they're never really behind the sticks. They don't put themselves in situations to get sacked. That's part of the reason they don't have a lot of sacks. So this isn't necessarily the Paul Johnson triple option offense, but they run it so much that, 3rd and 4, they might run it with the idea of being, hey, we're going to run it on 4th down if we don't get it, if we get close enough on this. So I think there's still sort of that mentality at Georgia Tech, even though they have abandoned the triple option. There's a lot of triple option elements, I would imagine, in this offense that they still have, but even though they're not in name an option offense.
Yeah, they've got 2 of their receivers who have combined for 10 carries this year, and those are just the ones I remember off the top of my head. So like I said, when they send those guys in motion like that, sometimes they do get the ball. They don't get it a lot, but they get it enough where it keeps the rest of the defenders honest, and that just opens up more inside stuff for Haynes and King. Haynes King.
Yeah. Are there any other members, like you mentioned, the receivers that are really catching your eye right now that could make an impact on this game for Georgia Tech?
Malik Rutherford's like a slot receiver who he doesn't make big plays, but he's a good, steady possession receiver. He gets you about 10 yards per catch. He's a redshirt senior who spent his entire career at Georgia Tech. A rarity in today's game.
As someone who can only complete passes, crossing routes across the middle in the video game, I'll tell you, Malik Rutherford comes up big in that regard. So,
Malik Rutherford trivia, he's the same size as me, 5'9", 170 pounds.
Built exactly the same, too.
Might be a little different.
So it feels like a common theme throughout all these position groups is a whole ton of experience. How impactful can that be that this program over the last few years has been able to keep this group and now they're ready to compete?
I think it's massive. You don't see that too much these days. I mean, they've got some transfers on the defensive side of the ball that honestly I don't think have really held up their end of the bargain so far this year. But I think offensively, you look at them and it's a whole bunch of seniors. They list like 4 guys on the depth chart at tight end, and 3 of them are redshirt seniors. Up front, you've got 2 seniors and a junior. 2 senior wide receivers, redshirt seniors actually. They've redshirted a ton of guys, of course, which is absolutely the right thing to do. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of their 11 defensive starters were redshirted at some point in their career. So just a tremendous amount of experience across the board. And like I said, as good as Haynes King is, he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. And I probably don't think Jamal Haynes might be borderline NFL. We'll see. Maybe depends on the system a little bit and whether he can return kicks. But there's not a bunch of NFL players on this team, which means you have to be well coached and you've got to have some veteran experienced guys who are used to playing with each other, and that's how you get the most out of your ability.
I think it's probably a credit to the job Key has done as the coach, and they brought him in, they elevated him as the interim, and he did well enough to keep the job. And he was a guy who was on that staff previously, so he knew the program in and out and played there and everything. But they figured out the head coaching hire, and if you have that, you can probably solidify the roster after that. They have a good idea of what they're going after, the type of player they want. It just seems like Georgia Tech has a vision of the type of player and the type of team they want to be right now, and it's built in Brent Key's mold, and they've supported that over the years.
And we've alluded to it a little bit, but Georgia Tech is coming off of the bye. How does that help them both physically, but also from a preparation standpoint and getting ready for Virginia Tech?
Well, they should be fresher. But the main thing is King should be healthy and fresh. He's the type of guy, if you catch him on the right week, if he had a game the previous week against a Miami or a Notre Dame or somebody like that, and he had 25 carries, you might not get the best Haynes King the next week. But it's been a couple weeks since he's played, so unfortunately for the Hokies, he should be fresh unless there's some kind of injury that we don't know about.
Believe me, by the end of every game I play with him on the video game, he's just full body red. It's run him into the line again, Haynes, over and over. Win it for the team here. So yeah, I feel like we always make too much out of the open week in terms of preparation. What do you see every time the Virginia Tech is an open week? It's we gave the veterans the week off, basically. And then all the young guys get to get some practice reps in. And those guys aren't actually going to play in the game. So it's not like they got any extra work with it. But they do get a week of rest. And, week 5 going into week 6 or, whatever this is in the college season, week 6 going into week 7. Do you need it at this point? Is it more valuable later in the season after you've been beat up a little bit more? Who knows? But they should be well rested coming in this game, and King especially, because I think you get him 100%. He's really dangerous.
And this year, everybody's got 2 bye weeks.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's see. So Georgia Tech has another one between NC State and Boston College. So that's spaced out pretty well for Georgia Tech. I think you get one after the 5th game of the season, and then you play 4 more. Then you get another bye, and then 3 more. So that's spaced out pretty well for them, I think.
And as long as we're talking about it, let's dive in here. Georgia Tech's schedule is quite intriguing. If they're looking to compete for the ACC this year, their schedule is somewhat favorable down the stretch.
I would say so. I mean, if you look at that, you've got a 2-4 Virginia Tech team at home. You're at Duke, and Duke looks like they're
That's a game.
Now.
That's a game.
It does look like a
don't
game.
overlook that one. That one can be decisive in this ACC race, I think.
Yep. I don't see Syracuse doing much this year without their quarterback. Sorry, Gio. NC State, they're not good against the run. Boston College isn't good against anything. Those last 2 games, of course, will be interesting. Pitt got a big win this past week, but then again, it was against Boston College. But yeah. Oh, did they really? Yeah. Wow. I think overall, though, that's a favorable schedule. But the thing about it is there's no ranked teams there. Georgia Tech loses to just enough unranked teams to make the ranked teams maybe overlook them a little bit.
Well, they're a lot like a couple teams up there, like NC State and Pitt. It's like just when you start to put faith into them, that's when they let you down in a game like that. At least historically, it's felt that way.
Yeah.
Perhaps people thought about Virginia Tech that same way in the past. I'm not sure, but I don't know. You always line up these games. You go, should win that one, should win that one, should that one. It's the ACC. Remember that weird things happen in the ACC. So don't count those chickens before they're hatched.
The wheel of destiny.
Do you remember when they lost to Bowling Green a couple years ago?
I do. Scott Leffler.
Scott Leffler
Yeah.
and Terrion Stewart, who had 130 some yards and
138, I think.
I think 11 forced missed tackles that game. It's fun. I was looking at his game by game forced missed tackles number, and a couple of weeks after that, they were playing Buffalo. He had 20 forced missed tackles in one game, which, by the way, that's twice as many as Bishal Tootin ever had.
And remember, it's not the same as breaking a tackle. You can force through moves.
Right. You can
and
juke
things
a
like
guy.
that.
Yeah.
All impressive stuff. We've talked about the offense. We'll eventually get to the defense and the game. But, Will, there's some really interesting numbers ahead of this contest, which we want to hear about.
Yes, today's Stat Time with Scott Glesner is sponsored by Tyrus Homes. At Tyrus Homes, our mission and purpose is to build houses that people love to call home. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, a growing family looking for more space, or an active adult seeking a relaxing home environment, we have the home for you. And Tyrus is based in Christiansburg, Virginia, so they build in the New River Valley and surrounding areas. And Jason White owns Tyrus, and he is one of my favorite sponsors because every month when I send out the sponsor invoices, Jason pays his immediately. So we love you, Jason. They also do a good job building houses. But seriously, if the guy is that good about his bookkeeping, he's going to be good about building a house and keeping everything organized.
The first time I heard the name Tyrus Holmes, I was like,
starting point guard.
I was like, is that some point guard we're recruiting? It definitely has that name.
It is. He told me it's Tyris, and he told me that is an amalgamation of the names of his three kids, I think, syllables and letters from his three kids. So that's how he came up with that. All right, let's get started. This is the first time in the past 6 matchups that at least one team is ranked, which I found interesting because I think, you go back to the heyday of Virginia Tech versus Georgia Tech when it was Frank Beamer and Bud Foster versus Paul Johnson. There were a lot of ranked matchups.
Well, so
that decided the Coastal Division every single year.
Seemed to, yeah. Remember 2012? I think was it a Monday night game and both teams were ranked. That was a big one.
Yeah, that was a
start of the season.
Labor Day night.
Yeah.
That was
I
the
think
first.
It was what was that? Corey Fuller had a late touchdown in that one.
That was.
And then Cody Durnell kicked the game.
That was
winner.
Dimitri Knowles.
Dimitri Knowles. Thank
Dimitri
you.
Knowles?
It was.
Yes.
Okay.
It was.
Okay, that's right.
That was. He was a redshirt freshman. Everybody said he's going to be so good.
He's going to be great.
Then,
Contested catch. It was a
Right,
great
I know.
catch. That was the first game that Tech Sideline was allowed in the press box.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
So and it's been all downhill since we had a press pass.
as soon as they gave us press
2012.
pass, it started being a 500 football team. But I tell this story all the time. I don't know if I've told it on the podcast or not, but from 2012 through 2015, I was the person in the press box. And I remember that game because Logan Thomas was coming off a good year, and there were something like 8 NFL scouts on the front row of the press box. The press box was full, and I think Andy will vouch for it. It's nowhere near full these days.
No.
That was, newspapers had started to take a hit back then, but they've really cut a lot of staff since then. And I remember Heather Dinich was working the ACC at the time, and she was sitting next to me. So I just remember being a packed press box. So let's see. Next, moving down the list, I found this really interesting. Virginia Tech has lost the last 6 times they went on the road versus a ranked team. Makes sense. Before that, though, Virginia Tech had won 10 of the previous 12 road games against ranked teams.
Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive. And, of course, the crown jewel of that's got to be the road win at Ohio State in 2014.
There was a stretch there where they were just much better on the road than at home.
Yes.
It felt like. Lane Stadium has lost a bit of its mystique in terms of being this intimidating presence. Like, oh, you don't go into Lane and come away with the win. It's like, actually, a lot of teams have done that over the last 15 years.
Yes. And then Scott's phrasing here is prior to the 1993 UVA game. So I think that maybe that 10-2 is from 1993 to whatever. But prior to the 1993 UVA game, Virginia Tech was 2-30 against ranked opponents on the road. So if you're doing the math, 2-30, 10-2, 0-6, 12-38 overall against ranked teams on the road. And get ready, encyclopedias, for a trivia question. Virginia Tech has had only one 100-yard rusher in the last 7 games against Georgia Tech.
Really?
Ooh.
One 100-yard rusher in the last 7 games. I'll give you 5 seconds of dead air.
Oh my God, 7 years goes back to. They didn't play Georgia Tech in 2020.
It was probably that game where they just blew them out.
No! It was
Braxton
true
Burmeister?
freshman 2021 who transferred after last season. Well, when he was a true freshman. Why have I forgotten his name?
You have got everything but the name.
Keyshawn
Malachi
King.
Thomas.
No, Malachi Thomas.
Okay.
He had back-to-back 100-yard games against Syracuse and Georgia Tech.
That's right. Right. I remember that.
And then they changed running styles or running systems, and he was not a fit for that type of system that they changed to.
This is kind of a stat. Let's see. The team that has won the turnover battle has won 10 of the last 11 matchups. Virginia Tech had a +1 turnover margin in what loss?
In what loss?
Yeah. They lost to Georgia Tech, but they were +1 in the turnover margin. I'll give you a hint. It was during a Fuente game.
2017.
2017.
The Josh Jackson game. He was really beat up in that game, if I remember right.
He got hurt at the end of the Miami game the previous week. And remember, they had flight problems coming back.
Yeah.
Like they had to land in Greensboro and then fly from Greensboro to like Johnson City, Tennessee, and then bus back from there. And they actually couldn't practice they do their normal Sunday practice. So they didn't get back till like 4 p.m. on Sunday or something like that. So you imagine getting hurt like that and then spending all that time either on a bus or on 2 flights and things like that. And he was never close to being healthy for that Georgia Tech game.
That was the one that they had. They were close at the end, and they're like almost in field goal range, and then they threw a deep ball to Cam Phillips, I think it was.
Right.
They're like, we're just going for the win here
Right.
at this point. It got picked off or knocked down. I can't remember exactly how it ended, but it's like, why did you throw that up on 4th down when you could have tried to get the first down? And so,
Oh, did he?
Yeah, the Hokies lost that one 28-22.
I think Georgia Tech only completed 2 passes in that game.
Yeah.
One of them was like for like a 70-yard bomb.
So PJ was still coaching them then? 2017?
Yeah.
So what I remember, so you said they played at Miami the week before. I remember that being a really competitive game. And I have this memory of, wow, I don't know how to phrase this, but Fuente just running Josh Jackson over and over and over at the end of that game. And that's when he took a beating.
No,
Does that ring a bell?
No, they were sacking the heck out of him because we were down by like 17 and probably should have taken him out, but they were just dropping him back and Miami was just teeing off. Like the play he got hurt, he had his arm back to throw. And then a Miami defender came over and did that number on his arm and really messed up his shoulder.
In 2018, Georgia Tech had a time of possession of 42 minutes and 18 seconds against the Hokies. That's the most by a Virginia Tech opponent since at least 1982.
that was a rout.
Yeah.
They weren't like you're like, oh, triple option, tough to handle. They were just running QB sweeps.
Right.
They made it like tricky about it.
Well, you remember early the Tech offense kept up. It was like touchdown every possession.
Yeah.
And then eventually you're just like, we just can't keep up anymore.
That was Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech lost that game 49-28, and that was a stretch of games where the Hokies like gave up 250 yards rushing a game. And this game was worse. It was like 350 yards rushing. They couldn't stop Georgia Tech at all.
The low point of Bud Foster's defense is at Virginia Tech.
Oh gosh, that 2018 defense that could not stop the run at all.
No.
Of the 20 matchups against Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech is 11-1 when allowing 20 points or fewer. And they're 1-7 when Georgia Tech scores more than 21, which again is kind of a duh stat. The only time that the Hokies won was in 2011 when they won 37-26.
That was a great game.
It was.
That was like a Logan.
was
That's
Logan.
like Logan
Oh,
Thomas
yeah.
is really going to be an NFL draft type game. He had that pass, and I don't know why I always remember this one. It was right before halftime. They get the ball in the 2-minute drill, and he zipped this ball across the middle that Danny Cole went up and caught, and then broke it free for a touchdown.
Yeah,
it was just like,
I forgot
oh
about
my
that
gosh,
play.
that was an NFL level throw there. Like this guy's got it all. And that never quite materialized, but I remember in that game, it was like anything is possible. And that's the game where he frustrated him so much, where they kind of stood him up on a third down play. And
Tech kept running quarterback sneak after quarterback sneak.
Well, they stood him up on a third down play, and Georgia Tech was frustrated they couldn't tackle him, and the whistle blew, and then it was Jeremiah Atachu, how you say his last name. He just swung at him. He just slugged him in the face. They're like, well, that's a penalty. Here's a first down, and they went on to score and win that game. And one of the many games where Kyle Fuller played like crazy. They put him at that linebacker spot specifically for that game, and he would just destroy that option. He was really good.
I also remember David Wilson being really impressive in that game. He had an incredible sense of balance, and I remember some run. I think on one run he got ping-ponged into doing a 360 and kept going. It was really impressive.
I always love those matchups. It's that Kyle Fuller's going to come in and step in into a really interesting matchup. The Mike linebacker will have 30 tackles in that game, whether it was Matua Pawaka or Jack Tyler before that. It seems like those guys just have crazy tackle totals in that game. But I always like that chess match between Bud Foster and Paul Johnson.
Yeah.
So we talked about on Monday during Stat Time with Scott Glesner about how Virginia Tech is 2-7 offensively on fourth downs, 28.6%. The only other season since 1985 that the Hokies did not gain at least 30% of their fourth downs was 2006. Not a shocker. I remember Hokies offenses from 2006 through 2008 being absolutely horrendous. Just a note, since 1985, Virginia Tech is just over 50% on fourth down conversions. 50.5%. And this is obscure. And this is the last one. Since 1993, Virginia Tech is 10-2 when playing on the 11th of the month. 10-2.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Take it to the bank. I would say go down to the Danville Casino and make a bet, but they don't let you do that for in-state teams.
Stars are aligning, and that has been Stat Time with Scott Glesner, presented by Tyrus Homes.
Well, thank you very much for that. They will be playing on the 11th of the month, so we'll have to see what happens there. We're going to have more about the Georgia Tech defense as well as predictions for the game, but first, a message from one of our sponsors at Tech Sideline.
This Tech Sideline video comes to you from the Tech Solutions studio. Tech Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is techsolutionsva.com/careers.
All right, well, now let's start by talking about the Yellow Jackets defense. And when looking at it, perhaps the number that sticks out the most, they do rank the worst currently in rushing defense in the ACC. So what does Virginia Tech have to do to take advantage of that?
Hope Terry and Stewart's ready to go and really, really commit yourself to running the football. I'm talking if the game's close, within arm's length, you keep running it and don't throw it more than 20 times if Montgomery can actually help himself, which he probably can't, judging on his career. But that would be ideal. Just as many carries as you can get and pound them. And because that attacks their weakness, and it also takes their best players on offense off the field. I think you need to try to shorten the game, limit the plays. They're just not – they've been good against the pass. They've got good cornerbacks. Their safeties are questionable. Their linebackers are just meh. They play 4 of them, but they've combined for 1 tackle for loss and half a sack on the year. They're not playmakers at all. So it's just one of those defenses where you look at them and they're not bad. Their overall stats are solid, but they're bad against the run and they don't make plays. They've only forced 3 turnovers this year, which is outside the top 100. I think they're outside the top 100 in sacks. They just don't create havoc. And that's good for this Virginia Tech offense because it seems like most every team they faced has been able to create havoc up front because the Tech offensive line has either been banged up or guys playing out of position or whatever. This is probably the most favorable matchup of the year so far, outside of Wofford, for the Virginia Tech offensive line.
Yeah, and it's not like they're coming into this game just on a heater throwing the ball. There was 111 yards last week against Wake Forest. Yeah, you've got to try to, if you're this big of an underdog, you got to find a way to, limit the other team's opportunities offensively. And how do you do that? You keep them off the field by running the ball. Terrion Stewart, if he can go, Marcellus Hawkins, good combination. We'll see if they can run block well enough to do it. Really couldn't get that push around the goal line against Wake Forest last week, and that cost them not being able to capitalize on that interception by IBM near the goal line. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, can Montgomery help himself? Because he does like to throw the ball, and that just does not seem to be the forte of this offense. I think got some playmakers at receiver. I just, with the operation of the pass blocking and drones in the pocket, it's just not been a successful formula throwing the ball. So your strength is going to be running it. And I say run it as much as you can.
Yeah, and you've got to do better in the red zone with that running game this week when you get to the red zone. Virginia Tech could have won field goal kicking competitions the last couple of weeks, but they're playing against Aiden Burr this time, who's 10 of 10 for, this year on his field goals, including a make from 55 yards. And
a game winner against Clemson.
Right, exactly. So this is not one of those games that you necessarily want to turn. I mean, I would trust John Love all day long, but I mean, it seems like it would be an even matchup for a field goal competition this time around. So you better score touchdowns when you get the opportunity.
Well, if they do choose to pass, they're taking on a defense who currently ranks 4th in the ACC in yards and efficiency. What do you see from that side of the ball, and what does Kyron Drones need to adjust this week?
I mean, they've got good cornerback play. Kyron is who he is at this point. I think for a successful passing game for Virginia Tech has to be the Georgia Tech passing game. It has to have a strong running game with a lot of eye candy, and then it's just 1 or 2 reads off of a strong running game, just like it was 2 years ago.
Run the Rutgers play.
Yeah. How about some Rutgers play? Yeah, several variations of the Rutgers play. That's what you got to do. So I don't know. I don't think you're going to sit here this year and say, well, what does Tech have to do differently passing the football? Their success in the passing game is going to come down to how well they run it, in my opinion, and the style of passing plays that they choose to run. And I haven't seen very much of that eye candy, smoke and mirror stuff in the passing game this year, and that's the type of stuff I think that Drones is best at.
I just think peak Tyler Bowen was probably a better fit for Kyron Drones.
Right.
Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Tyler Bowen went to Kyron Drones' house like the second that he could when the portal opened up that 1 year. I think he saw this guy as a perfect fit for what he wanted to do. And that was going to be run the ball a lot. Quarterback's going to be heavily involved in that run game, misdirection, stuff like that. Throw it 20 times max in a game. That's just not Philip Montgomery's offense. They're up around 30 passes, it feels like, every game. And I just don't know if you're going to win a lot with Kyron Drones as your quarterback if that's the style that you have.
Yeah, and it's interesting, people always talk about, the quarterback doesn't want to run the ball very much. Gerard Evans didn't want to run the ball. Kyron didn't want to run the ball. And he even said during preseason to me when I was interviewing him down in Charlotte, I forget the exact quote, but he said, we'll find out, we can move the ball in other ways besides the quarterback running. We can pass it some too. No. But you look at some of these other quarterbacks, like Haynes King apparently doesn't have a problem running the football. Diego Pavia doesn't have a problem running the football.
Like, you think Lamar Jackson's like, I don't want to run
I
the
don't
ball.
think I want to do that.
I don't want to get hit.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants to take big hits every play.
Of course.
And I think that's probably Gerard Evans' biggest gripe is, hey, you're just running me straight into the line over and over. Can we do a little bit more originality on some of the stuff so maybe I don't just get blown up on every play?
Yeah, King has 73 rushes in the 4 games he's played, so that's about 18 per game, which is Gerard Evans levels. That would be about 200 carries if he played an entire 12 games.
Well,
that's just 12 games.
He had like 25 carries against Georgia last year. I mean, can you imagine running into the Georgia defense 25 times?
Yeah, so...
I can't. That's why he fumbled at the end. He had a pretty key fumble that allowed them to get to overtime.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you take a look at this defense, are there any other potential standout players that could make an impact for Georgia Tech here?
Jordan Vandenberg's a very good defensive tackle, very good run stopper.
He's the guy I control on every play on defense
Yep.
in the video game.
Makes
Just because
sense.
I do the least damage with defensive tackles. Otherwise, it's just like absolute disaster. But he's good.
Yeah,
He gets in the. My entire scouting report comes from the video game this week.
there you go.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I mean that's a fair scouting report. Look, he's their only starter that grades out above a 70 on PFF. They're just not like, this is an opportunity for the Tech offense. If the Tech offense is going to go out and have a good game against an ACC opponent, like a consistent game, it's going to be this week.
Yeah, and you all have talked about it a little bit, but it feels like perhaps does Virginia Tech prefer this to be more of a low-scoring defensive battle than a shootout?
I don't think Tech can win a game in the 30s. First of all, you have to score 30 in a game, right? And they haven't done that yet. They did it against Wofford.
Come on.
Right. I mean, yeah, I know. Wofford's really good defensively. But
I've gone 11, 20, 26, 38 against Wofford,
yep.
23 and 23.
Right. So maybe you can do it against Cal. Certainly not against that Louisville defense. If you catch Florida State on a day where they decide not to show up, maybe, but I doubt it. Certainly not against that Miami front. Virginia's defense seems like it's gotten better, although it's not dominant.
You can do it against UVA, but UVA might score 50.
Right. That's right. So just don't see very many opportunities to do that. So, yeah, you got to win games in the 20s or preferably the teens.
And Chris, you talked about Georgia Tech does have a strong kicker as well. Are there any notes on the special teams that could really impact the game here?
Yeah, their punter is 16th in the country in punting. I think they've only allowed 4 punt returns on the season, and 30 of their 33 kickoffs have gone for touchbacks. So on paper, there's going to be minimal opportunities for returns in this game. Seems like special teams should cancel each other out. I think Georgia Tech is 27th in the special teams rankings overall, and Tech is 29th. Virginia Tech is 29th. How many times have I said Tech?
That's okay. We know what you mean.
We know what I mean. So I think Virginia Tech on paper will have to beat them straight up if they want to have a chance. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of hidden points or hidden yardage in the kicking game.
Yeah, as we get closer and closer here to making final decisions on this game, what's a key element to this contest that Virginia Tech has to win that part of the game for them to really see success?
I think if you can get an extra possession, preferably 2. Again, Georgia Tech doesn't force a lot of turnovers. They've only forced 3 this year. So don't let them go out and do something that they don't normally do. Don't give them the ball when they're not good at forcing it. And if you can force one of those yourself and then run the ball effectively, you shorten the game and you give yourself an extra possession. I think that's the biggest keys for Tech.
Yeah, I think they got to stay within arm's reach as well as they can. I mean, if they're down double digits in this one,
and then you got to throw it.
Yeah, it's just over at that point. I don't think this is a team that's capable of coming back from a deficit of like that. So, what's the key to the game? We always say start fast. Like, you got to come out and show them something early, show them that you're ready to compete. Because I think if you get behind them, Haynes King start running the ball, they just wear you down in that sense. It's going to be really tough for the Hokies.
Well, now let's talk about what is the prediction for this weekend's contest. Chris, starting with you, what do you see happening here?
There are certain things about this matchup that I like. Again, Georgia Tech, they haven't dominated teams this year. Their games are close. They shouldn't be undefeated. I mean, when the ACC officiating office comes out and says, yeah, we blew the call, then, there you go. I think their defense, like I said, is just kind of meh. There's no havoc plays on their defense, which is good for the Virginia Tech offensive line. So I like it from that standpoint. On the other hand, this is the exact type of offense that has given the Virginia Tech defense trouble this year. It's not the quarterback scrambling. It's it's the design runs, whether that be option plays, whether that be quarterback power. Georgia Tech does both of those things. And I'm inclined to say that the Virginia Tech defense will be better at it this week than they were in those 2 weeks where they just fell apart, because they have played better football since then with a different head coach. But at the same time, I've seen them struggle twice against similar offenses. So I need to see them play well against a similar offense before I feel like they've improved there. So I've got it 34-23 Georgia Tech.
I'll jump in next because I have the exact same score. And that wasn't intentional. I did a Q&A with a Georgia Tech site, and they asked me for a prediction at the end. I wrote it last night, and I sent it to them, and I came up with 34-23, and then I go to put my prediction into our thing today, and I'm like, Chris has the exact same score. I think, the line's 14. Open at 14. It might have gone up since then.
It was 14.5 when I did the preview yesterday.
Okay, so 11 points would be covering in this, and part of that is like I don't think Georgia Tech always shows up and gives its best against lesser opponents, and this is a lesser opponent for them. Virginia Tech has struggled this year, 2-4. They're not coming in with a number before their name like Clemson was a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. That said, I do think they got that scare a couple weeks ago by Wake Forest, and perhaps that should, they're not going to come out flat, I don't think, in this game. They're well rested coming off the open week. They've had that wake-up call, so I think they win this one comfortably. I just don't think that they blow up, run away with this one by 18 or 20 or something like that. So 34-23 sounds like a football score. That's what I predicted too.
Yeah, so I think this is an important season for Brent Key. Coming into this season, he had a reputation as a good coach, and he's had some good wins, but his overall record is 18-16. And part of his reputation was built against the first year against Georgia. They got beat by I think 20 or 25 points, but the last 2 years they've played Georgia pretty tough. So it's an important year for him. He started out well. He's 5-0. If he wants to continue to establish his reputation as a good coach, not just a good coach, but maybe a great coach, he can't lose this one. I agree with what you guys have said about how it can be close. I think for Virginia Tech to win this one, everything that went wrong against Wake Forest needs to go right for Virginia Tech against Georgia Tech. You guys each picked by the same score, 11 points. I also picked 31-20, 11 points. And scrolling down the other predictions here, David Cunningham picked Georgia Tech 34-16, so a wider margin. And Nick is in blowout city here, Georgia Tech 38, Virginia Tech 17. So all 5 of us pick Georgia Tech to win by 11 plus. And in the early going, that's where the fans are. We are 141 votes into it, and 69% are picking the Jackets to win by 11 plus.
The good news is we all completely stink at our picks recently.
So let's get into that. Chris is 3-3. Every one of the staffers and the fans are 2-4, and we're not even picking.
Which one did I pick? Did I pick us to lose to?
You picked. Didn't you pick Vanderbilt?
Yeah,
different?
I did. Yeah. Not by 24.
Yeah.
The tough part is when it feels like it's zigzagging and you're trying to catch up with them and you can't. It's like, all right, maybe they figured it out this week, and then they lose. Like, all right, I'm down on them, and then they come out and they'll compete the next week after that. So that's sort of. You get behind and you try to catch up to the last week's result, and sometimes that's a real problem when you're making predictions. So you should just go against the initial thought that you have. It's like, what do I think is going to happen? I'll just pick the opposite of that for this one.
I almost got wild and picked the Hokies to win, but I did not.
Well, you're going to the game.
I'm going to be there, yes.
You were at the NC State game.
That is true.
So when you go to road, Virginia Tech is unbeaten in road games this year.
It's all about me. So, this you're going to ask at some point what's coming up on Tech Sideline. And since Chris said I'm going to be there, I am actually staying an extra day and going to the College Football Hall of Fame on Sunday. I got to check and make sure it's open on Sunday. I would assume it is. I think there's 11 Hokie coaches and players in the College Football Hall of Fame is the research that I did, or that's what AI told me, and you know how that is. But I'm going to go in and take pictures of all the displays and kind of, run a little something. So if you're following the written content, Monday Thoughts is going to be on a Tuesday this coming week. And I don't know if I'll have a lot to say about the game or the program itself, or just about being at the College Football Hall of Fame and seeing the Virginia Tech displays.
Awesome. What else do we have on techsideline.com?
I've got a Friday Q&A tomorrow. And since next week is the bye week, I'm going to be doing 2 coach profile articles next weup. So I'm looking forward to that.
I've got a story tomorrow I'm doing on that Halloween jersey heist in 2007.
Nice. Jersey get
caught up with Sean Glennon. There's a little twist on it from the last time. I don't have the perpetrators, and I've tried. I have some maybe some good leads on that. I've not been able to quite break through and find out who did this whole thing. But there's an interesting twist on this whole thing with Glennon that I think could be a fun little read tomorrow.
Yeah. So one more thing regarding the podcast set and all that, we have some new lights coming in. So next time you see a person in this chair, they'll hopefully be better lit than I have been. And we took advantage of the Amazon Prime days to buy an iPad for Nick that will help in production. I think it'll make some differences here. He's clapping. I think it'll make some differences here in what you guys see on the show, but mainly his ability to run it is going to get improved once we add the iPad to the mix.
We're going to have to wear sunglasses on the set. Is it going to be that bright now?
I don't know about that.
If you ever sat with like studio production light right in your face, it's extremely bright.
It is pretty bright in here. The main thing is just getting the angle over on this chair a little bit better. I think the other 3 chairs look great. And I think we also need to light that thing behind me and actually put something in it.
Probably so, yeah.
So lots of great steps upcoming. We've got Detective Bitter on the case as well for that story. And so when we take a look at the audio video schedule, it is packed as always. We had a Wake Forest recap earlier in the week. If you're into Hokies basketball, there's just about everything you need this week. As there's
David got to have fun this week.
Yeah.
He didn't have to talk about football this week. Lucky him.
and David loves. I mean, he's our basketball guy, and he loves covering basketball, but he will just flat tell you he likes covering basketball a lot more than he likes covering football.
But there's interviews with coaches and players from both the men's and women's teams for Virginia Tech right here on the YouTube channel, so make sure to go check that out. There's a press conference breakdown of what Philip Montgomery had to say earlier in the week, as always, as well. Talking with David Teal is up on the channel after this video. Make sure to check out Buy or Sell, and then as Chris alluded to, the Friday Q&A as always. Well, thank you for watching episode 444 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. For Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, Andy Bitter, and Nick Brown behind the scenes, I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.